Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Balconia Garden podcast. This is where we talk about all things container gardening, both indoor and outdoor. You'll find tips and tricks for growing a flourishing container garden, regardless of the size, shape, or space that you have. You can also find video tutorials on my YouTube channel. It's called Balconia Garden, and you can listen to this podcast on the YouTube channel and also on Spotify. The account is called Balconia Garden Podcast. Welcome to episode 6. This is actually part 2 of the February gardening jobs episode, the last episode, which was all about jobs that we can be getting on with in our outdoor container gardens, or if you have potted plants outside, things that you can be doing now around this time. Today we're looking at what we can be doing inside, so we're going to be looking at houseplant jobs in February. I will link the previous episode down in the description box. I'll also link the January gardening jobs episode down there too if you're interested, because the jobs in that podcast they're also still relevant for February. So let's get to it. The first job is to check in with your houseplants. They are normally in a semi-dormant state, so I would really recommend checking in with them and ask them, how are you, plants? Are you done with winter as much as I am? Because most of our houseplants will be in this semi-dormant state. Over winter, we reduce watering, we stop fertilizing altogether. We can use a mister to increase the humidity. Because of the use of radiators or indoor heating, this tends to dry out the air, which most houseplants don't like. So we are technically still in winter. However, some houseplants might start to begin to show signs of life, which means we can start to increase the amount of water that we're giving them. Also, the days are getting longer, so you can move your plants nearer to the light or put them in the brightest part of your home as bright as possible. Hopefully you've done that over winter anyway, but maybe now you have access to new brighter areas in your house or in your home because, there's more daylight. I still think it's too early to fertilize most plants, save a few. I'm actually going to talk about one of them in a minute. So, just give them a once over, look for any kind of pests and diseases. But I would say the best thing to do for them is to now start to increase the amount of water that you're giving them. The next job is to clean your houseplants. So over time, layers of dust will build up on the leaves. So to keep them functioning at their best and to allow the leaves to properly photosynthesize, which basically means the leaves capture the light energy from the sun, and then the plant, through many processes or different processes, they then transfer that light energy into chemical energy and use as food. But of course, the leaves have to be clean enough for the light to be able to penetrate the leaves. So make sure that the leaves are clear of dust. I normally just use a moist paper towel on my smaller plants, so something like my Clivia or the Sansevierias or the Phalaenopsis plants, and I just wipe along the leaves with this moist paper towel. It tends to do the trick. For my larger plants, I put them in the shower and I give them a good rinse. Not, don't need to blast them or anything, but we want it kind of to be the water pressure to be hard enough where most of the dust will then be removed. You can use lukewarm water, and then at the end I tend to dry the leaves with a paper towel again, just to make sure that all the dust is off, and also do another check for any pests or diseases. If you have fluffy or furry or thorny plants like cacti or something like an African violet, you can use a soft brush instead of water. I wouldn't use water on this type of a plant. And when it comes to cacti, I actually saw someone online hoovering their cacti. It was a woman, I've forgotten her name, unfortunately. If I remember, I'll link it down below. But she has this beautiful, huge cactus, and it was really dusty, so she was literally hoovering it. And it did the trick. So yeah, whatever it takes to get the plants clean. The next job is to fertilize your orchids. I adore orchids. I've just counted my ones. I have 16 Phalaenopsis. And I have 1 Paphiopedilum. And I would have more. If I had more space, I would have more as well. So that's something to look forward to in the future. If you have winter flowering Phalaenopsis, I'm just going to say Phalaenopsis, there are also summer flowering or even hybrids that produce 2 flower spikes a year or that flower twice a year. But if you have winter flowering Phalaenopsises, they're most likely flowering already or are about to. When I'm looking at mine, they all have their flower spikes ready. They've got these lovely little buds on them too, and the buds are sort of fattening up as they tend to do just before they're about to open up and flower. So I'm going to start fertilizing them with a light fertilizer that is specific for orchids. I know some people fertilize once a month during winter their Phalaenopsis. I just tend to leave mine because Phalaenopsis plants do not typically like a lot of fertilizer. They are very light feeders. And I also live in a hard water area, so it's possible that the water that I'm watering my Phalaenopsis with, it's providing them with enough nutrients anyway. But if in doubt, when it comes to fertilizing, always use less fertilizer than what is recommended on the product. I use a liquid fertilizer that I bought from my local garden centre. As I said, it's specific for orchids, and I tend to build up the amount of fertilizer that I use. I tend to use about half the amount that is recommended anyway, but for the first few times I'm fertilizing my Phalaenopsis, I will water kind of even a quarter of the amount. I don't want to overfeed them. Also don't want the roots to burn in any way because, you know, they've got these gorgeous fat roots. I know they are protected by the spongy aspect to them, but still, I'd rather do it nice and slowly and not stress them out at all. And I'll probably do this about every 2 to 3 weeks. And that's always worked for me. The next job is to check the roots of your houseplants. So you can actually, depending on the size of the plant, you can normally just take the plant right out of the pot and just have a look at the roots and see how they're looking, if they're healthy or not. If you're noticing roots coming out of the bottom of the pot, it's time to repot. If you take the plant out of the pot and you've noticed that the roots are really touching the sides of the pot and are even starting to kind of grow around in a circle, this is the beginning of a pot-bound plant, which is not what we want. We don't want any of our plants suffocating at all. So this is time to, this means that it's time to repot them. So you can either repot them now or you can wait until next month. I normally do my repotting in about March. Choose a container that's about 1 to 2 sizes larger than the previous pot. Make sure there are drainage holes. And I would use a really good quality houseplant growing medium. You can also mix your own as well. I just want to add something about my experience with houseplant growing medium. So I'm not going to lie, I've had very mixed experiences with buying even good quality, expensive potting mixes or, houseplant mix from reputable companies, from reputable garden centres. Often when I buy this kind of medium, it's normally fine. But sometimes, I don't know, like for example, the last bag of houseplant medium that I bought, they had beasties in it. And now, unfortunately, I have thrips. Managed to contain the thrips. They're just on one plant, but I did actually lose a philodendron, which I'm really upset about. So what I would recommend is if you have any kind of plant where you're able to take a cutting of that plant. So say I have pothos. I've got 2 hanging baskets of pothos in the flat. What I would really recommend is take a cutting of a plant and then pot that cutting up with your new medium that you've just bought. And I would wait like 1 to 2 weeks and just observe what happens with this cutting. Because I did that after the fact, unfortunately. And I saw, because I was like, is it me? Is the plant just upset that I've moved it or repotted it? No, it was the growing medium because I put a new cutting into this growing medium and I did some tests. Within a week, the cutting was failing big time and it had thrips. So I would just be wary. It's just my experience, just something I wanted to share with you. So you're not losing any houseplants, especially if they're, you've had them for a long time or they mean a lot to you or they're special or rare or exotic. And as I mentioned before, you can also mix your own houseplant medium. So yes, just some ideas. And the last job is to do some light pruning. So just like with our outdoor plants that we can be pruning right now, so our shrubs and trees, we can remove any dead, diseased, damaged or dysfunctional growth on our houseplants. Basically, if you see any yellow or brown leaves, any old roots in your Phalaenopsis, for example, that are now dead, any flower spikes that have now gone over, so if you have an amaryllis or clivia like me, or if you have any spring flowering bulbs in your home indoors, like tulips, hyacinths, things like that, you can just snip off the dead foliage or the dead flower spike. I wouldn't go too mad with the pruning, but make sure you are using sterilized, sharp secateurs. And you can cut on a 45-degree angle like we do outside. That's more for making sure that any kind of rainwater will just slide off the cut and that it won't go into the cut and then, it will lead to rot. of the plant. But I don't know. Yeah, we'll do whatever angle you like. So that was my indoor / houseplant garden jobs that you can be getting on with in February. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you would like to support the channel and the podcast, subscribe or follow. Have I missed out any jobs that you are doing right now for your houseplants? I would love to hear about it. I'm sending you all my good wishes, and I will connect with you in the next podcast. Goodbye.